America doesn't always lose friends over betrayal. Sometimes it's Oreos and orange juice, a blue shell on the last lap, or the holy war over caramel. This is 101 gloriously petty breakups, ridiculous, relatable, and a little too real. If you've ever iced a friendship over fries, spoilers, or a thumbs-up emoji, welcome. This one's your mirror. 1. He ordered pineapple on a pizza they were supposed to share. This isn't just a topping preference, people. This is a declaration of war. Some lines you just don't cross, and the Hawaiian pizza line is apparently guarded by the ghost of friendships past. A truly fruity betrayal. 2. One friend casually dropped the ending of Game of Thrones before the other had seen it. After years of emotional investment in dragons and questionable family dynamics, the friendship was executed faster than Ned Stark. Some spoilers are just unforgivable, apparently. 3. She didn't like her friend's new profile picture on Facebook. In the ruthless currency of social media validation, this was seen as a direct act of aggression. The friendship was officially over after the digital cold shoulder. A single click could have saved it all. 4. He threw a blue shell in Mario Kart right before the finish line. This single act of digital sabotage was apparently enough to erase a decade of loyalty. The betrayal was so profound they haven't spoken since. All is fair in love and Rainbow Road, right? Wrong. 5. The crime was double-dipping a chip at a Super Bowl party. One person saw their supposed friend take a bite, then plunge the chip back into the communal dip. It wasn't just a party foul, it was a character flaw so deep the friendship couldn't be salvaged. Hygiene over history. 6. She discovered her best friend unironically loved Nickelback. Not just one song, but their entire catalog. The shock and horror were too much to bear. How can you trust someone's judgment after a revelation like that? It was a fundamental incompatibility of the soul. 7. He responded to a long, heartfelt text message with a single letter, K. The recipient interpreted this as the ultimate act of passive-aggressive dismissal. The friendship, which had been built on thousands of words, was ended by the lack of just one more letter. 8. One person ended a friendship because they had a dream their friend stole their car. They woke up, were genuinely furious about this fictional crime, and refused to believe it didn't mean something. Apparently, dream logic is now grounds for a real-life restraining order. 9. They had an explosive argument over whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie. What started as a casual debate devolved into a full-blown screaming match about cinematic integrity. The friendship, it turns out, was not as indestructible as John McClane. Yippee-ki-yay, friendship over. 10. It all came down to the pronunciation of the word caramel. One said caramel, the other insisted on caramel. The debate became so heated and personal that they decided they just couldn't see eye to eye, or rather, hear ear to ear, on anything important ever again. 11. Kevin lent Dave his good Tupperware container for some leftovers. Dave never returned it. After 3 weeks of passive-aggressive texts about the missing container, Kevin declared the friendship a lost cause. Apparently, some plastic is thicker than blood. 12. The friendship was officially dead the moment she put ketchup on a well-done steak at a nice restaurant. For her friend, this wasn't just a questionable food choice. It was a crime against humanity and a personal insult to his culinary sensibilities. Some things you just can't unsee. 13. On a 6-hour road trip, Jessica appointed herself the official AUX chord hog and refused to play anything but her obscure indie folk playlist. The friendship didn't even survive to the destination. It died somewhere on I-80, smothered by the sound of a ukulele. 14. A guy named Mike sent his friend a Venmo request for 67 cents for his share of a bag of chips they split. The sheer pettiness of documenting and billing for such a tiny amount was enough to make his friend block his number and his account. 15. It all came down to a game of Monopoly. One friend, who owned Boardwalk and Park Place, refused to show mercy and gleefully bankrupted his lifelong pal. The ruthless display of fake money capitalism revealed a darkness the friendship couldn't recover from. 16. Sarah's friendship imploded because her friend tagged her in a group photo on Instagram where she was clearly blinking and had a double chin. The refusal to take down the unflattering picture was seen as a deliberate act of sabotage. Digital warfare is brutal. 17. Think your best friend really knows you? One guy ended a friendship because his buddy enthusiastically recommended a Netflix series he had already described hating just a week earlier. "He just doesn't listen," he said. "It shows a fundamental lack of respect for my character." 18. The deal breaker was the toilet paper roll. One insisted it goes over, the other was a staunch under advocate. The argument in their shared apartment escalated until they realized they had irreconcilable differences and could no longer live in the same house or be in the same life. 19. Chris, a die-hard Yankees fan, couldn't stomach his best friend showing up to his summer BBQ wearing a Boston Red Sox jersey. He wasn't joking. He considered it the ultimate sign of disrespect in his own home. The burgers were flipped, and so was their friendship. 20. The argument started over a sandwich. One friend cut it diagonally, creating two perfect triangles. The other grabbed the knife and recut it straight down the middle, declaring it the only correct way. This philosophical divide on sandwich geometry was the final straw. 21. Their roommate-turned-enemy status was cemented by the microwave. One guy consistently left just a few seconds on the clock, never clearing it. The other saw this not as laziness, but as a deep-seated character flaw that made friendship impossible. That blinking a .03 was a ticking time bomb. 22. A 20-year bond was severed during a heated debate over which is better, Star Wars or Star Trek. It got so personal with insults about intelligence and taste that they decided their worldviews were simply too different to coexist. The final frontier was a lonely one. 23. Emily saw the two blue check marks. Her text was officially read. But for 6 agonizing hours, there was no reply. The anxiety and perceived disrespect from being left unread was a modern betrayal she just couldn't forgive. The friendship was ghosted. 24. They were on a bowling team together, and one friend consistently stepped over the foul line. Despite repeated warnings, he kept doing it. His friend, a stickler for the rules, finally snapped and quit the team, citing a complete breakdown of athletic integrity. 25. And for the grand finale of absurdity, the friendship ended when one person tried to earnestly convince the other that birds aren't real, but are actually government surveillance drones. The other person just slowly backed away and never spoke to them again. You can't fix that. 26. A guy named Brian watched in silent horror as his friend Mark took a bite out of a 4-fingered Kit Kat bar like it was a solid brick of chocolate. No snap, no separation. Brian couldn't get the image out of his head. He said it revealed a chaotic evil he couldn't be associated with. The friendship was snapped more cleanly than the candy bar should have been. 27. Jennifer was part of a group chat planning a trip. One friend kept replying to the entire group with messages meant for just one person. After she replied, "Sounds good, babe, can't wait," to a chat of 12 people for the third time, Jennifer decided the friendship was too cringe-inducing to continue and silently left the group forever. 28. The friendship ended over a fantasy football trade. One friend offered a ridiculously insulting trade, something like a backup kicker for a star running back. The other guy took it not as bad strategy, but as a deep, personal sign of disrespect for his intelligence. The league and the friendship were officially dissolved over the fake sports transaction. 29. After learning her best friend was a Gemini, a girl named Chloe completely ghosted her. She later explained that her personal astrologer told her their Scorpio-Gemini energies were fundamentally incompatible and would only lead to chaos. She chose the cosmos over a decade of shared history and inside jokes. 30. The final straw was walking through a crowded mall. One friend meandered at a glacial pace, stopping abruptly to look at random things, completely oblivious to the human traffic jam he was creating. His friend, a brisk power walker, just couldn't handle the inefficiency anymore and literally walked right out of his life. 31. It was a simple act of wastefulness that killed the bond. For years, he watched his friend eat the entire cheesy part of the pizza and leave a graveyard of perfectly good crusts in the box. He eventually saw it as a metaphor for how his friend lived life, only enjoying the good parts and callously discarding the rest. 32. The sacred, unwritten rule of shotgun was violated. A friend, fully aware of the code, sniped the front passenger seat from someone who had clearly called it first from the front door. This breach of car ride protocol was seen as a betrayal of trust so fundamental, the driver declared their friendship had officially run out of gas. 33. They sat down to watch the most anticipated movie of the year, and one friend spent the entire 2 hours scrolling through Instagram with his screen brightness set to maximum. The constant glow was a beacon of disrespect. The other friend decided if he couldn't respect the sanctity of movie night, he couldn't be trusted with friendship. 34. The friendship literally died because one person could not stop using the word literally incorrectly. After hearing his friend say, "I was so tired, I literally died and came back to life," for the 10th time that week, he just snapped. The pedantic grammar nerd inside him couldn't maintain a relationship built on such flagrant abuse of the English language. 35. At a group dinner, one guy who had 2 appetizers and 3 expensive cocktails suggested they just split the bill evenly. His friend, who had only ordered a side salad and a glass of water, quietly paid the even split, then went home and blocked his number. The friendship was officially written off as a bad debt. 36. During a friendly game of Scrabble, Mark played the word quasi for 82 points. His friend Tom challenged it, found it wasn't a real word, and removed the tiles. Mark insisted it was a real word he'd heard somewhere and accused Tom of being a sore winner. The argument over the fictional word ended their very real friendship. 37. It all came down to a thank you wave. When another driver let them merge into traffic, the friend behind the wheel did nothing. No wave, no nod, no acknowledgement. The passenger saw this as a sign of a cold, ungrateful heart, a small window into the soul of someone who doesn't appreciate common courtesy. He got out at the next stop and never called again. 38. A friendship ended because one person consistently used speakerphone for all their calls and shared spaces. Whether it was in the car, in the living room, or walking down the street, everyone was forced to listen to his mom ask about his laundry. The other friend just couldn't handle being an unwilling audience to his entire life. 39. The roommate bond was severed by the ice cube tray. One person would consistently put the tray back in the freezer with only 1 or 2 cubes left in it. This tiny, repeated act of selfishness was interpreted as a massive character flaw, creating a Cold War that eventually froze the friendship solid. 40. And how about this for a reason? One person insisted that a hot dog is, in fact, a sandwich. The other person argued that it is structurally a taco. The debate became so passionate and philosophically entrenched that they realized they could never agree on anything truly important in life, and it was better to just go their separate ways. 41. The friendship came to a screeching halt when one friend, a self-proclaimed music aficionado, constantly shamed the other for liking mainstream pop music. After hearing, "Oh, you like that song? It's so commercial," for the 100th time, he decided he'd rather enjoy his Taylor Swift in peace than hang out with a walking pitchfork review. 42. It was a breakfast betrayal. A man walked into his kitchen to find his roommate and best friend of 5 years pouring the milk into the bowl before the cereal. He didn't say a word. He just watched this crime against morning rituals unfold and knew, in that moment, that they were fundamentally different people who could never truly understand each other. 43. Ashley ended a friendship because her friend kept posting vague, passive-aggressive statuses on Facebook like, "So tired of fake people, you know who you are." When Ashley would text to ask if everything was okay, the friend would reply, "I don't want to talk about it." The emotional manipulation for attention finally became too exhausting to deal with. 44. He was a chronic one-upper. If you said you had a headache, he'd had a week-long migraine that caused temporary blindness. If you mentioned you saw a deer in your yard, he once nursed a wounded moose back to health in his bathtub. The friendship finally collapsed under the weight of his constant, exhausting need to be more interesting. 45. The sound of his friend chewing was the final nail in the coffin. It wasn't just normal eating, it was a symphony of loud, wet smacking and crunching that could drown out a jet engine. After one particularly horrific meal involving a bag of potato chips, he decided that preserving his sanity was more important than the friendship. 46. The thermostat war. In their shared apartment, it was a silent, ongoing battle. One would secretly crank the heat up to a balmy 78 degrees, and the other would later sneak out of bed to drop it to a frigid 65. After months of this passive-aggressive climate control conflict, they mutually decided to terminate both the lease and the friendship. 47. One friend consistently used the thumbs-up emoji to end conversations. To the other, it wasn't a sign of agreement. It was the most dismissive, passive-aggressive digital gesture imaginable. After a long, heartfelt text about a personal problem was met with a solitary "or," the friendship was deemed unworthy of a more thoughtful response. 48. His friend drove a beat-up old sedan, but consistently parked it across two spaces, as if it were a priceless Lamborghini. He claimed it was to prevent door dings. The sheer, unadulterated entitlement of this act, day after day, slowly eroded all respect until there was nothing left of the friendship but a poorly parked monument to selfishness. 49. They were trying to watch a new horror movie, but one friend insisted on loudly whispering his predictions for what would happen next. Every single one was painfully obvious or just completely wrong, yet he delivered each one like a genius plot twist revelation. The constant idiotic commentary ruined the movie and the friendship along with it. 50. It was his infuriating habit of explaining every single joke right after telling it. He'd deliver a punchline, and before anyone could even laugh, he'd launch into a detailed breakdown of why it was funny. He was a comedy killer, and eventually, his friends decided the relationship was no longer worth the punchline autopsies. 51. The friendship couldn't survive her friend's inability to order at a restaurant. Every single time, she would stare at the menu for 20 minutes, ask the waiter a dozen questions, make him describe 3 different entrees in detail, and then just say, I'll just get the chicken fingers. The sheer inefficiency was maddening. 52. It was the ultimate modern betrayal. He gave their shared Netflix password to his new girlfriend without asking. The friend who paid for the account found out when his continue watching list was suddenly filled with cheesy romance shows and all the profile icons were changed. This digital home invasion was an unforgivable offense. 53. He called his friend out for stealing his jokes and passing them off as his own in a different group chat. The joke thief's defense was that a joke is for the people, man, it can't be owned. This absurd, high-minded justification for blatant comedic plagiarism was so ridiculous that the friendship was declared null and void. 54. The friendship was a casualty of the fry tax. One friend would always claim she wasn't hungry and wouldn't order her own food. But the second his plate of fries hit the table, she would transform into a seagull, systematically picking them off one by one. He ended the friendship on the grounds of repeated, deliberate French fry larceny. 55. And then there's this. One person truly believed that every single coincidence was a sign from the universe and would spend hours trying to decode the message behind seeing 2 red cars in a row. The other friend, a fan of logic and reason, just couldn't handle another conversation about the cosmic significance of a license plate number. 56. It was his driving. The man would consistently drive 10 miles per hour under the speed limit in the far left passing lane, completely oblivious to the line of furious cars trailing him for miles. His friend, trapped in the passenger seat, saw this not as cautious driving but as a crime against the natural flow of traffic and a fundamental character flaw. 57. The friendship ended because of her inability to take advice she desperately asked for. She would spend 2 hours crying on the phone about her terrible boyfriend, listen to a detailed plan on how to leave him, agree with everything, and then post a happy 1-year anniversary picture with him the very next day. Her friend retired from her role as a free and completely ignored therapist. 58. He was a constant question asker during movies. Wait, who is that guy again? Why is he going in there? The final straw came during an action scene when a character explicitly said, "I have to defuse the bomb," and his friend leaned over and whispered, "What do you think he's gonna do?" The friendship was canceled due to a critical lack of listening skills. 59. A guy lent his friend his favorite paperback novel. It was returned a month later with a cracked spine, dog-eared pages, and what appeared to be a marinara sauce stain on a crucial chapter. He didn't just borrow a book, he disrespected an old friend. This act of literary abuse was an unforgivable sin. 60. At a fairly nice restaurant, he watched his friend order an expensive glass of Cabernet Sauvignon and then asked the waiter for a cup of ice to put in it. The sheer, unadulterated barbarism of this act was so jarring, he realized he was dining with a monster. He couldn't in good conscience remain friends with someone who would commit such a vicious act of winecide. 61. The friendship was terminated over the abuse of voice memos. Instead of a simple text, he would receive 5-minute-long rambling audio messages filled with long pauses, ums, and background noise. He finally decided he didn't have the time or the emotional energy to listen to his friend's daily unedited podcast about nothing. 62. She got a message that started with the dreaded "Hey girl." Her supposed best friend had added her to a Facebook group to sell her a new brand of life-changing leggings without even asking. The friendship was instantly downgraded to a business opportunity, and she wanted no part of it. She declined the invitation and the friendship simultaneously. 63. He was chronically, unforgivably late for everything. Not 5 or 10 minutes, but a solid 30 minutes every single time, with a new, unbelievable excuse. The friendship officially died in a movie theater lobby after he missed the entire first act of a film they had been planning to see for weeks. Some things just aren't worth the wait. 64. After moving to a new city, his lifelong friend, a die-hard Chicago Bears fan, suddenly declared he was now a Green Bay Packers fan. Not because he had a change of heart, but because he thought it would be more fun to have a rivalry. This betrayal of a sacred, lifelong sports allegiance for the sake of casual debate was too much to bear. 65. It was the classic disappearing act. His best friend got into a new relationship and completely vanished from the face of the earth for 6 months. No calls, no texts. Then, the moment they broke up, he reappeared with a "Hey man, what's up?" text, expecting to pick up right where they left off. The friend decided he was no longer interested in being a relationship placeholder. 66. During a game of Settlers of Catan, one friend refused to trade another a single brick for the entire 2-hour game, despite having 7 of them. It wasn't a strategic move. It was pure, unadulterated spite. The refusal to part with a fictional resource revealed a real-life pettiness that the friendship couldn't overcome. 67. The friendship ended over a re-gifted item. A woman received a birthday present from her friend, the exact same, very specific, artisanal scented candle she had given that same friend for her birthday 6 months prior. The original handwritten gift tag was still tucked inside the box. The laziness of the betrayal was almost impressive. 68. He was a well-actually guy. No matter what the topic, he would find some tiny, insignificant detail to correct in the most condescending way possible. Well, actually, it was the summer of 1998, not 1999. The friendship died a slow death by 1,000 pedantic, unnecessary corrections. 69. She was a transportation black hole. She always needed a ride, lived completely out of the way, and never once offered to chip in for gas. The friendship finally ran out of fuel when she asked for a ride to the airport at 4:30 a.m. for her vacation, then acted surprised when the answer was a firm friendship-ending no. 70. One friend was incredibly excited to try a new, highly rated local restaurant. The day before their reservation, his friend went there without him, then proceeded to describe every single dish, the decor, and the surprise dessert in excruciating detail, effectively spoiling the entire experience. The friendship was left with a bad taste in his mouth. 71. They made a sacred pact to watch the final season of a show together, and only together. But one friend's recently watched list on the shared streaming account told a different story. The betrayal was discovered, the denial was unconvincing, and the friendship was canceled before the show's actual finale. There's no coming back from series infidelity. 72. The friendship was put on a permanent hold after one friend was unforgivably rude to a waitress over a minor mistake with his order. The other friend sat in silent horror, realizing that how someone treats service staff is how they'll eventually treat you. He paid his half of the bill and left the friendship behind as a tip. 73. He was a sore winner. After narrowly winning a game of Madden, he didn't just celebrate, he performed a full choreographed victory dance in the living room and then sent a screenshot of the final score to their group chat with the caption, "Bow down to your king." The digital humiliation was too much to bear. 74. He appointed himself the permanent devil's advocate for every single conversation. If you said the sky was blue, he'd argue about atmospheric light scattering. If you said pizza was good, he'd launch into a monologue about its nutritional deficiencies. The friendship died from the sheer exhaustion of having to defend every basic concept of reality. 75. She tried to recruit him into her multi-level marketing scheme for the 5th time. The friendship had slowly devolved from hanging out into a series of unsolicited sales pitches about financial freedom and being his own boss. He finally realized he wasn't a friend anymore. He was a potential customer in her downline. 76. On a flight back from vacation, the plane landed safely, and his friend was the person who started the obnoxious, slow, rhythmic clapping. He didn't just join in. He was the instigator, patient zero of the applause apocalypse. The second-hand embarrassment was so profound, he pretended he didn't know him at baggage claim. 77. It came down to a complete inability to use the correct your and your in text messages. After receiving a text that read, "You're going to be late for your own party," he just couldn't take it anymore. He felt his brain cells dying with every notification and decided the friendship was a grammatical lost cause. 78. In front of a group of new people, his best friend decided to tell his most embarrassing and deeply personal story from high school for a cheap laugh. The story landed, everyone laughed, and in that moment, he realized his friend valued a moment of attention more than a decade of trust. The bond was broken for a punchline. 79. His entire personality became CrossFit. Every conversation was rerouted back to his WOD, workout of the day, his paleo diet, or how much he could deadlift. He wasn't just in a fitness program, he was in a cult. His friends finally excommunicated him after he tried to demonstrate burpees during a funeral reception. 80. The crime was culinary theft from a shared fridge. A man came home from a terrible day at work, looking forward to the one perfect slice of leftover lasagna he'd been dreaming about, only to find an empty container and a few sauce smears. His roommate's blatant denial was the final, friendship-ending ingredient. 81. It was his friend's bizarre eating habit. He watched in disbelief as his buddy dipped Oreos, not in milk, but in a glass of orange juice. The sheer psychopathy of this flavor combination was a window into a chaotic soul he could no longer associate with. Some food crimes are simply unforgivable. 82. The friendship ended because of his incessant car horn usage. He would honk exactly 1 nanosecond after a traffic light turned green. He'd honk at people for parallel parking. He'd honk at pedestrians for existing. Being a passenger in his car was like sitting inside a rage-fueled anxiety attack, and it had to stop. 83. She was a terrible, almost insulting gift giver. For her friend's 30th birthday, a friend who was a passionate vegan and animal rights activist, she gave her a leather-bound journal and a gift card to a steakhouse. It wasn't just thoughtless. It was a demonstration that she knew absolutely nothing about the person she called her best friend. 84. The betrayal was a single, devastating like on Instagram. A girl's best friend was caught liking a recent bikini picture posted by her mortal enemy and ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend. The unwritten rules of the girl code were shattered. This digital act of treason was considered a declaration of war. 85. He was a backseat chef. Anytime he was invited over for dinner, he would stand in the kitchen and critique every single step of the cooking process. Are you sure you should chop the onions that way? That's an interesting amount of garlic to use. The host finally decided it was easier to end the friendship than to cook for him ever again. 86. He was one of those people who would call you on the phone for something that could have been a 3-word text message. The sheer inefficiency and disregard for modern communication etiquette became too much. The final phone call he received was a pre-recorded message from his friend's blocked number list. 87. The friendship was ruined by a reality TV spoiler. One friend, who was a day behind on watching The Bachelor, had the dramatic rose ceremony outcome casually spoiled for her in a group chat. The emotional betrayal was apparently just as real as the love on the show, and she ghosted the spoiler immediately. 88. It was his dog. The friend had a large, poorly trained dog that would jump all over everyone, and his only response was always a cheerful, "Don't worry, he's friendly." After having his nice clothes ruined for the third time, he decided that a friendship shouldn't require him to own a lint roller and have zero fear of being knocked over. 89. In the middle of an important face-to-face conversation, his friend would suddenly answer his Bluetooth earpiece and start a completely different conversation with someone else, holding up one finger as if to say, "Pause." The consistent act of being treated like a live TV show that could be paused for a commercial break was the ultimate deal breaker. 90. He was the guy who always forgot his wallet. He'd show up for dinner, drinks, or movies, and when the bill came, he'd do the whole exaggerated pocket patting routine. The friendship was finally terminated after he forgot his wallet at a cash-only food truck while holding a brand new iPhone. 91. His entire personality was quoting lines from The Office. Every situation, every conversation, every joke was met with a "that's what she said," or a reference to Dwight Schrute. The friendship ended when his friend realized he was no longer talking to a person, but to a human soundboard of a show that ended over a decade ago. 92. On a supposedly relaxing vacation together, one friend created a minute-by-minute, color-coded itinerary that included mandatory 6 a.m. sunrise yoga and scheduled fun time. The other friend just wanted to sleep in and drink by the pool. The friendship did not survive the hyper-organized tyranny. 93. She was a chronic long-story-short liar. She'd start every mundane anecdote with, "Okay, so long story short," and then proceed to tell an excruciatingly long, boring, and detailed story that had no business being told in the first place. The friendship was ended to reclaim those stolen hours of life. 94. After you'd spent all night showing them a new band you loved, playing all the best songs, his only comment was, "Yeah, they're okay. They kind of sound like a worse version of insert obscure band he likes." The condescending musical gatekeeping finally became too much to tolerate. 95. A friend was asked to keep a very expensive, very fragile plant while its owner was on vacation. He was given a detailed list of instructions. He forgot about it for 2 weeks. The plant, a prized 6-foot fiddle leaf fig, was returned as a pot of brown, crunchy sadness. The friendship was composted along with the plant. 96. He was a chronic advice ignorer. He would spend an hour complaining about a problem, you would offer thoughtful solutions, he would ignore all of them, do the exact opposite, and then call you a week later to complain about the disastrous results of his own decision. The free consulting gig was officially over. 97. The final straw was a like on a social media post. But it wasn't just any post. It was a vicious, subtweeting post made by a mutual enemy, clearly aimed at him. Seeing his supposed best friend's name in the list of likes was the modern equivalent of seeing him hand ammunition to the enemy. 98. She insisted that her dog, a tiny shivering chihuahua named Princess Sparkles, was her emotional support animal, and brought it with her everywhere, including a fancy restaurant where it yapped from inside her purse the entire time. The friendship ended when she was asked to choose between her friends and the purse dog. She chose the dog. 99. A guy watched his friend pour a bowl of cereal, realized there was no milk in the fridge, and then proceed to eat the entire bowl of dry cereal with a spoon, as if nothing was wrong. He said he just couldn't be friends with someone who operates with that level of chaotic, unhinged energy. 100. It all ended during game night. One friend was a notorious rule lawyer. He would pause the game every 5 minutes to Google an obscure rule, debate the precise definition of a word on a card, and generally suck all the fun out of the room. The group decided it was easier to just stop inviting him than to argue about the bylaws of Uno. 101. And finally, the ultimate modern friendship killer. He showed his friend a meme he thought was hilarious. His friend glanced at it for half a second, let out a barely audible "heh," and immediately went back to scrolling on his own phone. This profound lack of meme appreciation was the final sign that their souls were no longer connected. Your turn. Drop the pettiest, most embarrassingly stupid reason you ever ended a friendship. No soft stories, no excuses. If this video made you laugh, cringe, or recognize yourself a little too clearly, hit like and subscribe so we can continue exposing humanity together.